And McCain, you know, I have a transcript of the son of a bitch falling apart. I don't know what McCain's problem is. We watched that, and I said to Kathy, I think he ought to get some medical intervention as quickly as possible. So he came up with this line of questioning today, McCain did, that conflated these two separate FBI investigations. Oh, he's not said, he's 80. He kept saying he believed there was what he called a double standard because an investigation into the use of a private email server by Clinton was finished, completed in July, while an investigation into Russia's meddling in the presidential campaign continues. Yeah, go figure. He said, McCain said, quote, "It's hard to reconcile. In one case, you reach a complete conclusion, and the other side you have not," end quote. What the fuck is he talking about? And then he put this in. He said, quote, "She's one of the candidates." Well, not any longer, you asshole. But in her case, you say there will be no charges. And in the case of President Trump, the investigation continues. End quote. Jesus. That's why I think McCain has some kind of a physical anomaly that has developed in his brain. No offense, the man's 80. He's been through a lot of shit of his own causing, but he's been through a lot of shit. But this guy is losing it. Here are the facts. There was a year-long investigation by the FBI of Hillary Clinton and the goddamn server and the goddamn email. One of the most ridiculous goddamn investigations in the history of this country. But the hard-on for Hillary Clinton goes on forever. Forever. And part of that is because she's a female, and God damn her for having the temerity to think she could be the leader of this country. And I'm not getting into a debate of her qualifications or her shortcomings. I've done all that. I don't give a shit anymore. The point I'm trying to make is I agree with her. So much of the attack was misogynistic bullshit. So here's McCain today putting exclamation points after that. Misogynistic bullshit. On July 5th, Comey announced there would be no criminal charges against Clinton for her handling of classified information while she was Secretary of State. And of course, the right wing in this country just goddamn blew up. You know, Rush Limbaugh his brain almost collapsed into his belly. Hannity and the rest of these pricks just went berserk. But Comey, regardless of how he made the announcement, and I think he did a very shitty way of doing it, it should have gone right up the chain to the Justice Department. And any announcement by the attorney about Clinton should have been made by the Attorney General. But Comey's recommendation was no criminal charges for anything she did as Secretary of State. Now, that investigation had absolutely nothing to do with the continuing investigation of how and to what degree Russia sought to and succeeded in influencing our last presidential election. But McCain tried to connect the two. And it was really pathetic to watch him do it. It was like, please, Uncle John, shut the fuck up and go back to your room. Really, go on. You had your dinner. Now go back upstairs. Don't say any more crazy shit. You're embarrassing the family, and you're making an ass of yourself in front of our guests. Now go on back upstairs. Do you want Cousin Mary to help you up the steps? Jesus, God. Referring to the announcement by James Comey last July, McCain said today, quote, "I don't quite understand how you could be done with that, but not done with the whole investigation of their attempt to affect the outcome of our election," end quote. Now, at that point, Comey, to say the least, appeared to be a little befuddled himself. And he said, quote, "I'm a little confused, Senator." And then he went on to clarify that there were two separate investigations, and the one had nothing to do with the other. But McCain continued this ridiculous questioning. The instant reaction on Twitter, and I was one of the people who tweeted, was extremely critical of McCain, as well it should have been. And I don't know where this came from, but Joe Walsh, that former Republican congressman asshole, said on Twitter that McCain was, quote, "making no sense," end quote, as if Joe Walsh has ever made sense in his life. And some of McCain's colleagues who didn't want to be identified by the New York Times here said they were worried about his well-being after his performance. And on social media, including political critics, shared that sentiment, as I did. I said that I had the feeling from watching him he needed medical intervention now, seriously. And then McCain's office issued a statement explaining why he wandered during questioning. McCain later said, quote, "I get the sense from Twitter that my line of questioning today went over people's heads." What? And then he added, "Maybe going forward, I shouldn't stay up late watching the Diamondbacks night games." Right. And then he added this in a statement after his breakdown during the hearing. He added this, quote, "What I was trying to get at," and he just makes this worse. But listen, what I was trying to get at was whether Mr. Comey believes that any of his interactions with the president rise to the level of obstruction of justice. In the case of Secretary Clinton's emails, Mr. Comey was willing to step beyond his role as an investigator and state his belief about what, quote, "no reasonable prosecutor," end quote, would conclude about the evidence. You see what I mean? It's just turning into a maze of bullshit. He goes on, "I want Mr. Comey to apply the same approach to the key questions surrounding his interaction with President Trump, whether or not the president's conduct constitutes obstruction of justice. While I missed an opportunity in today's hearing, I still believe this question is important, and I intend to submit it in writing to Mr. Comey for the record," end quote. Now, what I have here, thanks to New York Times, is a transcript of the questioning. This was compiled by the Federal News Service. Senator Burr, the chairman of the committee. "Senator McCain? McCain. In the case of Hillary Clinton, you made the statement that there wasn't sufficient evidence to bring a suit against her, although it had been very careless in their behavior. But you did reach a conclusion that in that case that it was not necessary to further pursue her. Yet at the same time, in the case of Mr. Comey, you said that there was not enough information to make a conclusion. Tell me the difference between your conclusion as far as former Secretary Clinton is concerned and Mr. Trump." Comey. "The Clinton investigation was a completed investigation that the FBI had been deeply involved in, and so I had an opportunity to understand all the facts and apply those facts against the law as I understood them. This investigation was underway, still going when I was fired, so it's nowhere near in the same place. At least it wasn't when I was McCain. But it's still ongoing?" Comey. "Correct. So far as I know, it was when I left." McCain. "The investigation was going on. The investigation is going on. You reached separate conclusions." Comey. "No, that one was done." McCain. "That investigation of any involvement of Secretary Clinton or any of her associates is completed?" Comey. Yes, as of July 5th, the FBI completed its investigative work, and that's what I was announcing, what we had done and what we had found. McCain. Well, at least in the minds, plural, of this member, there's a whole lot of questions remaining about what went on, particularly considering the fact that, as you mentioned, it's a, quote, big deal as to what went on during the campaign. So I'm glad you concluded that part of the investigation, but I think that the American people have a whole lot of questions out there, particularly since you just emphasized the role that Russia played. See what I mean? There's no sense here. He goes on. And obviously, she was a candidate for president at the time, so she was clearly involved in this whole situation where fake news, as you just described it, big deal, took place. And you're going to have to help me out here. In other words, we're complete. The investigation of anything that former Secretary Clinton had to do with the campaign is over, and we don't have to worry about it anymore? Comey, with respect to Secretary, I'm a little confused, Senator. With respect to Senator Clinton, McCain, yeah. Comey, we investigated criminal investigation in connection with her use of a personal email server. McCain, I understand. Comey, and that's the investigation I announced the conclusion of on July 5th. McCain, so, but at the same time, you made the announcement there would be no charges brought against then Secretary Clinton for any activities involved in the Russia involvement in our engagement in our election. You following this? I don't quite understand how you could be done with that, but not complete. Done with the whole investigation of their attempt to affect the outcome of our election. Comey, no, I'm sorry, we're not, at least when I left. When I was fired on May the 9th, there was still an open, active investigation to understand the Russian effort and whether any Americans work with them. McCain, but you reached the conclusion that there was no reason to bring charges against Secretary Clinton. So you reached a conclusion. And in the case of Mr. Comey, President Comey, no, sir. McCain, I mean, excuse me, case of President Trump, you have an ongoing investigation. So you got one candidate who you're done with, and the other candidate that you have a long way to go. Is that correct? Comey, I don't know how far the FBI has to go, but yes, that the Clinton email investigation was completed. The investigation of Russia's efforts in connection with the election and whether there was any coordination, and if so, with whom, between Russia and the campaign. McCain, you just made it. Comey, was ongoing when I left. McCain, you just made it clear in what you said. This is a, quote, big deal, unquote. I think it's hard to reconcile. In one case, you reach complete conclusion, and the other side, you have not, and you, in fact, obviously, there's a lot there, as we know, as you called it, quote, a big deal. She's one of the candidates. But in her case, you say there would be no charges. In the case of President Trump, the investigation continues. What has been brought out in this hearing is more and more emphasis on the Russian engagement and involvement in this campaign. How serious do you think this was? Comey, very serious. But I want to be clear, we have not announced, and there was no predication to announce, an investigation of whether the Russians may have coordinated with Secretary Clinton's campaign. McCain, no, but they may not have been involved with her campaign. They were involved with the entire presidential campaign, obviously. Comey, of course, yes, sir. And that is an investigation that began last summer and so far, as I'm aware, continues. McCain, so both President Trump and former candidate Clinton are both involved in the investigation. Yet one of them, you said there's going to be no charges. And the other one, the investigation continues. Well, I think there's a double standard there, to tell you the truth. Then when the president said to you, you talked about the April 11th phone call, and he said, quote, because I've been very loyal to you, very loyal, we had that thing, end quote. Did that arouse your curiosity as to what, quote, that thing was? Comey, yes. McCain, well, why did you ask him? Comey, it didn't seem to me to be important for the conversation we were having to understand it. I took it to be some effort to communicate with me that there is a relationship between us where I've been good to you, you should be good to me. McCain, yeah, but I think it would be intensely arouse my curiosity if the President of the United States said, we had that thing, I'd like to know what the hell that thing is, particularly if I'm the director of the FBI. Comey. Yeah, I get that, Senator. Honestly, I'll tell you what, this is speculation, but what I concluded at the time, in his memory, he was searching back to our encounter at the dinner and was preparing himself to say, I offered loyalty to you, you promised loyalty to me. And all of a sudden, his memory showed him that did not happen. And I think he pulled up short. That's just a guess, but a lot of conversations, I've had a lot of conversations with humans over the years. McCain, I think I would have had some curiosity if it had been about me, to be honest with you. So are you aware anything that would believe you to believe that the president or the members of the administration or members of the campaign could potentially be used to coerce or blackmail the administration? Comey, that's a subject for investigations, not something I can comment on sitting here. McCain, but you reached a conclusion as far as Secretary Clinton was concerned. But you're not reaching a conclusion as far as this administration is concerned. Are you aware of anything that would lead you to believe that information exists that could coerce members of the administration or blackmail the administration? Comey, that's not a question I can answer, Senator. Senator Byrd, the senator's time has expired. Yeah, no shit. I think McCain's time expired a long time ago. But that, I mean, I don't know if you watched that. There's a lot lost in my attempt to translate it, but if you watched it live, it was just like, holy Christ, McCain is coming apart at the seams. I will bet you that within the next day or two, McCain's going to wind up in the hospital, and they're going to find that he, what is it called, Kathy? A TIA, transient ischemia attack? Is that, what does that mean? A little stroke? One that's not real serious, but has an effect in the moment, right? In watching that, about halfway through what McCain was saying, plus the pale look to his face, I don't think I'd ever seen him look so pale. McCain usually has that kind of ruddy, I don't know what it's from, the burst veins on his face, maybe from too much drinking, maybe from, being out in the sun too much in Arizona. I have no idea. But that coloring to his complexion today was gone. He looked pale. Even his lips looked pale. Remember that? He just looked, I don't know, he looked like a man who was very sick. And he would ask the questions, and if you noticed, he would look around the room. He would just look around. And Comey would try to answer, and McCain would start another asinine question. Now, a lot of the senators do that. They like to intimidate the witnesses. You're not going to intimidate Comey. But none of the questioners, none of the senators on this committee today with Comey tried to intimidate him. They may have asked some challenging questions, but they paid attention to his to his answer, and they gave him eye contact. McCain didn't do that. I would not be surprised if McCain dies within a week. I wouldn't. I would not be the least bit surprised. Let's see what happens tomorrow.